Oh, CM, Nuu-Chal-Nuth, Season 4 of the TRC 57 Speaker Series, Learning with Syeyutsus. Series is a part of the work that the Nanaimo Ladysmith Public Schools has put on over the last number of years around the work around implementing the Syeyutsus policy of friends working together, learning to be a different organization on the territories of the Hul'qumi'num speaking peoples here on the west coast of what's now called Canada. We're in a different location than we have been in the last few years for today's start because we've done some cultural work this morning with some students from a school close by. We're also pleased to welcome our first speaker, Dr. Richard Atleo Umeek, and we'll introduce him more formally in a moment. I'd like to turn to our relative Tsawalk and open up our series this year. And then I'll pay some respects to, we have some guests in the room and some organizations that continue to support us this year.
C and C, yeah. Chachas ashmein haidk at a hail eit squail at an agwail. Haidk at a hail eit net tamach eat a muck stemmy at an agwail eat a muck squail. At an quail needs a petamadama. Ihwam quam stucht squalawinst. Ihwam amastal eit squalaman. Ihwam Zeta with total at the thema CI's titlenamet. Ihwam slachen to Swalakwa senu at the cocky out. Ihwam slachen stucht on a skikkel is Swalakwa. Ihwam latlamet de mug Swalakwast. Heitka kutst what at an atamach at an aquel to muck squel. Nawa squamquams at a silitst. Whoa, oh, oh, whoa, oh, 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 whoa, whoa, Why ha ha, why ha ha ha, why ha ha, why ha why ha, why ha 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 hey, why ha ha, why ha hey.
Muchas gracias. Welcome, everybody. Thank you, brother. I'd like to raise my hands to the Vancouver Island Regional Library, one of our co-hosts this year, and also constantly and consistently the support of UBC Press for reaching out to the authors that you have and connecting us to help us do this good work. Welcome, everybody, for the beginning of this year's TRC 57 speaker series again. We're very pleased to open up this year with Dr. Richard Atleo, Umeek, renowned author, thinker. He's here with his family too, so they're in our audience today. We're honored to have you here, Umeek, a Hausa elder, to talk a little bit about the work that's encompassed in his latest book, Tsawalk, a Nuu-Chal-Nuth Worldview. So the floor is yours, Uncle.
What I came to do here has already been done in the ceremony here this morning. For those in the audience who missed the ceremonial process here, too bad. But we welcome the international audience today, and thank you also to the school district and to the institutions who allow what was not allowed in the past centuries to happen in this country. And it's much to the benefit of Canada, to the Vancouver Island, to the province of British Columbia, to any people. And one of my colleagues, Dr. Turner, worked with me on the scientific panel for sustainable forest practices in British Columbia. And there, the scientists eventually admitted to us, we too were once Aboriginal. Now, isn't that something? We too were once Aboriginal. So if you think, go back far enough, all of you people, you can say the same. We too were once Aboriginal. And if you know a little bit about the recent several hundred years, you'll know that to be Aboriginal and to admit that you were once Aboriginal is quite an admission, quite an admission. So I'll leave the mystery of that statement for you to figure out. I want to introduce now what happened ceremonially here today. For me, was a taste of an experience that I lived from the time I was born into the first few years of my life before I learned any English, spoke only my language. And I thought it was the only language in the world, of course. And so the ceremony here today, I spoke volumes which cannot be articulated even in a good partial, like, would take a complete doctoral degree completion to explain even some of the implications of what happened ceremonially here today. Because what happened ceremonially here today can be from the point of view of research, where we understand when you're doing research, what part of your research can be generalized? What part of it can you apply to life? What part of it can you apply up in the mountains, down in the valleys, in the depths of the ocean, amongst the stars? What can you apply there? And if you do some research into the history of our peoples, you will begin to plumb the depths of a richness, of a wisdom, of a way of life that is sometimes not possible to articulate in human language, but can be understood down here, can be understood down here, even if it never gets into this area of your life. And so, back in the 70s, there was a conference of my people to determine what to call our language. And what they called our language was Ta'at Aksapa. Many of the things you will hear from me today, right, you will forget by tomorrow. But the spirit of what I'm saying will be important. The spirit of what I'm saying will be important. And all of these young people here that have been blanketed today, some of you may understand the blanketing from another perspective, such as mantle. Do you have a mantle? Have you had a mantle placed on you to do a certain job, with gifts that come with the mantle, to perform acts of power, or perform acts of putting things together that have been broken? And a mantle can give you an authority, a mandate to do things in life that you couldn't do without that mantle. No way you could do it without that mantle. And the mantle would be similar to the uniform a police officer wears and stops the traffic in a great city. Tiny little lady wearing a uniform could stop a major traffic. So that uniform is very much like the blankets. It's an authorization of protection, a mandate to protect yourself. And it's up to you to wear that mantle, to wear that cape for yourself. And it was given to you by your wealthy one. And the wealthy one is there as a sign, as we have a sign in the sunshine today. And I believe strongly in signs. And all of our ancestors believed in signs. And if they were inarticulate in the reading of script, they were very articulate in the reading of signs. So Ta'at Aksapa is rooted in the word Ta'akuk, meaning true or truth. Ta'at Aksapa then, linguistically speaking, is an expression of a search for truth, expression of a way of life, Aptiuk, going the right way. And that's simple to understand for anyone, even children can understand. If you go the wrong way on a bicycle, you will hurt yourself, fall into the ditch. On the trip from Ahausa to Tofino, if you're not familiar with the trip, there are all kinds of reefs that you can run into, sink, and destroy yourself. It's going the wrong way. Aptiuk, go the right way. Go the right way. And that's the teaching. And that's in the name of our language, Ta'at Aksapa. Find the right way between your home and your destination. Find the right way. And the blanket will help you to find that right way. That mantle that you have as a gift, you are given a gift, will help you in going the right way. Ta'at Aksapa. The way you speak will show you the right way. The way you speak, all the words that you speak. And my grandmother Mary, my mother's mother, Mary, she said, be careful what you say, because once you say it, you can't take it back. Once you speak, you can't take the words back, and it goes out there. And when you speak to your children, don't your words have power? Don't your children listen to the words you speak? And if you speak bad words, they said, if you're pregnant, stay away from angry people, bad words, stay away, because what is said out there has a power and go into that little one inside and affect it in the wrong way. And so our people were always concerned about how going the right way in everything, from the time you're in the womb and the time you're born. Go the right way. Be kind. So much of what happened today, if I could presume to be your teacher for at least 21 years or so, where you would achieve, if you completed my course in 21 years, you would begin in kindergarten and then you would carry on until you receive your doctorate degree. Do you know that a doctorate degree is only a fraction of the knowledge available to us? It's just a fraction. I have a doctorate degree, but it's only a fraction of the degree of the field of study into which my degree applies. It doesn't apply to very, very much. And some people disparagingly will say, well, it's just piled high and deeper, right? Piled high and deeper. So those of you that have a doctorate degree can smile. And protocols of Tsawalk. I coined a phrase on a scientific panel, Hishikas Tsawalk, and when that became popular amongst as soon as the Nuu-Chal speakers heard Hishikas Tsawalk, they picked it up as their own. And why is that? Because it is their own. It is their own. Hishikas Tsawalk. It means everything is one. Everything is connected. Everything is related. So all the words that you heard today, Hishikas Tsawalk, applies to what was happening today. Hishikas Tsawalk, you people from the school district, and you people from Ontario originally, right? You're part of that one. But again, it's like the blanket, right? And you can take the blanket off. If you can put it on, you can take it off. Right? You can divorce yourself, or you can marry, come together. Hishikas Tsawalk. Hishikas Tsawalk, yes. Everything is one. And why did Nuu-Chal people who spoke the language, understood the language, why did they immediately know that this was true? Because Hishikas Tsawalk cannot be proven in terms of scientific research. There are theories developed in science that can never, ever really be proven, but eventually come to be accepted as fact. The theory of evolution often is spoken of as though it's been factually proven, but it can never be factually proven by human beings. Can it? Can it? It's a rhetorical question. So I will reference then some of the major stories that I have perceived our stories, major stories, as similar to theoretical constructs. The theory of evolution is one perception of reality, the nature of reality. Right? So we have the story of Nuu-Chal-Nuth, son of Raven. And that story I have I've called it A Raven's Quest for the Light, which is a legitimate way of of describing that story. And all of these stories, like the Son of Raven story, originally when heard within the academy, was taken to be a mythical story that had no basis in reality. And there was a scientist, a philosopher rather, who said, civilization cannot begin until you get rid of these stories. That was an explicit statement that he made, thankfully, because I could use that statement as an example of an attitude that's legitimate from the Western world about our world. And the story, those stories are representative of our world, of the way we view reality. And, and so the story of Son of Raven's quest for the light then is like a proposition. One can treat it and completely in the same way as other theories are treated. And then you can conduct investigations based on this premise. And then you can come up with all kinds of information about the nature of reality, nature of who we are, nature of what we are. And these ideas then are actually, they are debatable. But they're debatable because there's no final proof for any of it. And as long as there's no final proof, we can argue till we're blue in the face. I'm always right and you're always wrong. And so, but in the story of Son of Raven then, an important theme, thread within that story is the connection between the people, the original first people, and the Creator. And the Creator lives across the river, across the ocean rather, sorry. And the ocean represents the divide between here and there, or in the language of scripture, between heaven and earth. And in the stories then we have the complete picture of reality as other peoples envision their reality of the spiritual domain and the physical domain in that story. And there's a connection between the spiritual domain and this domain. And it's a natural connection in terms of relationship. We have gathered here together in a relationship, and you have spoken, and you've spoken to each other. In the story, we have the first people speaking with the Creator and having a conversation. And more than that, there was a protocol developed in that story. There was a learning process in that story for the first people. And so that's what we do in school. It's a learning process. And those of you that are teachers, you went through your learning process to become a teacher. And those of you that have studied plants, you went through a learning process. And then you learned that there are protocols involved in that process. There are ways that if you violate the ways, you don't get the proper information. Right? And things go wrong if you don't understand the protocol. Right? And so we can think of, we were talking about medicine. Right? Why is medicine required? Right? The implication is that without medicine, right, there's something that is present, that is a threat, that is real. And it's called illness, and it has many manifestations. And it's not just physical, it's also from the spiritual domain. And our people knew this. They knew this, that the physical domain is not the primary reality. It's not the primary reality. And they understood from universal experiences, I can say that, universal experiences, because our ancient societies depended completely, in an Nuu-Chal language, on Utumch, which is a spiritual practice. It's a spiritual practice that began right from the beginning. You began right from the beginning. And so for me, it was a dive into the ocean, age 3 or 4. Dive into the ocean. Dive into the ocean. Immerse completely into the water. That's the beginning of spiritual training. For years later, my great-grandfather Keista would spend 8 months in the spiritual practice, continuously for 8 months. So strong, so mighty was the belief. And what was it based on? It was based on evidence. Food came in, clothing, housing, teachings to keep you safe, to blanket. Blanketing is a visible demonstration of all of the practices of our people to bring nourishing food and to keep them safe in their homes, to have a measure of security. We call witwalk. People who are like police, like National Guard, strong people to protect. Strong, very, very strong, fearsome. And they scare the daylights out of you when you first see them. But that was on purpose. Why? Because there's danger. You know, if there was no danger, there'd be no need for blanketing. If there's no danger, there'd be no need to, so we have protective devices all over society in our computers. The computers have to be protected because there's danger you know about it. Well, I know about it for sure. Then there's, how much time? Okay, yeah. I'll move on to another story called Son of Mucus. Son of Mucus, Enktenmyth, is a major story for Nuu-Chal-Nuth. And it has to do with a giant. Now, if you know anything about stories around the world, you'll find that all peoples have stories about giants, right? And so here we have stories about giants. I had a friend, Cephas, Gerald Cephas, Stalo, in the Stalo country, and he gave me a book that was written middle of the last century, and it was the same story as our story of Enktenmyth, about a giant. And the giant would steal children. The giant is, we can think of the giant as a metaphor, and giants are in existence today in different forms. So the powers that be in the spiritual domain they never go away, and they always emerge in different forms. Today, we might perceive giants as like a corporation. A corporation can be perceived as a giant, particularly when they're not doing a good job with pharmaceuticals, for example, which some pharmaceuticals can be destructive to personal well-being. Right? And that's difficult to prove. Difficult to an education for us is extremely important. To understand chemistry, to understand biology, to understand the nature of the development of medicines, modern medicine, and how modern medicine works today. And if we let governments talk to us about what they are not educated in themselves, they have no skill in medicine themselves unless they have been trained as medical doctors or medical researchers. Right? You have to have the proper training to speak to the proper area in which you've been trained. And recently with the COVID, you understand there's still today a lot of controversy surrounding what happened with the COVID pandemic, right? And how governments around the world spoke authoritatively about an area that they are not expert in, and they should have been consulting the experts. Who is the medical expert around here? And many of those medical experts were silenced. They were not allowed to speak during this. I want to get back now to the story of the giant. The giant stole children. The giant would come into Ahos, where my people were, out on the West Coast, and steal children. And one of the children stolen was the daughter of the chief's wife, Hakum. And she was grieving, and as she was grieving, she was mucus coming out of her nose naturally from the grieving process. And as she let the mucus go, the mucus took on a life of its own and flew into a mussel shell. And eventually, she noticed that in the mussel shell, a little baby was formed. And so it's a fantastical story, but really in the culture, in the beliefs of the day, not that fantastical, because miraculous events and transformations of that kind were quite commonplace, actually, because the practices of the people, with their strong belief in the spiritual domain, had constant interaction with the spiritual domain, from which emerged all kinds of events that manifested in the physical domain. And so any of you that are familiar then with the current scriptural descriptions of the same, where you have a spiritual manifestation in the physical, a birth process takes place, where a spiritual entity takes on flesh and becomes a being like we are. And this spiritual being who took on flesh becomes a being and then becomes just like the community into which that being is born, and speaks the language and learns the language, eats the same food, becomes just like Ahus speaking the language, and obeying all of the laws, obeying all of the teachings into the family into which this being is born. And this being has a purpose. This being has been like blanketed. It has a mandate, the purpose why this being came into the earth, Intimate, son of mucus, right? And the purpose eventually was to battle the giant who was destroying the families, destroying the communities. And so we have a different kind of destruction that takes place in our communities, right? We can speak in many ways about this. One of them is through drug addiction, through suicide, through alcohol, through these that have manifested themselves and overwhelmed our communities. And so the children are taken. They are literally taken. And then they die. They are destroyed. They are killed. Right? And we can trace some of this to the giants of advertising, to people that lure you into the wrong way. We see, look, you're going the wrong way. Up, go the right way is our teaching. Right? And so an important element in the story of the giant is that the mandate given to son of mucus was performed, completed, and was successful. For the mandate was to go after that giant, that evil giant, and to kill it twice. Once crushing the head, first death. Second, killing and putting an arrow into the heart, the second death. 2 deaths. 1, the physical, and 2, the heart. And you will see a parallel of these deaths in other belief systems of the world, other belief systems. This is our story, Nuu-Chal-Nuth's story. So we knew about the power of evil. And then along came people who perhaps were well-meaning in what they believed. Well-meaning in what they believed. And they said to my ancestors, look, none of your way is worth anything, get rid of it. You're not allowed to speak your language. My first day in residential school, I saw my cousin, and immediately a window opened and I was commanded not to speak my language. Right? First day. The last day at the University of British Columbia, I was commanded not to write one word of my culture. Do not write one word of your culture. And the idea for that was to get rid of me. And it was almost successful. I almost walked from the university as a result of that mandate from my advisors. And then I decided that I'm going to do what they asked me to do, but when I'm done. And so we're here today because thanks to those people, because it may be that had they not persecuted me in that way, I may never have written those books, never have met you. Right? So these are the strangeness, the mysteries of life, the mysteries of life. There, I'll just mention briefly one other story. It's about chimps, bear, and chimps have been stealing salmon out of a fish trap that was owned by a Nuu-Chal-Nuth fisher. And eventually, Nuu-Chal-Nuth fisher, he camped out to see what was going on with his fish traps, and there was bear helping himself to the salmon. And so now, Nuu-Chal-Nuth fisher had two options, right? The first option was just to get rid of the problem, you know. That's the Hitlerian solution, right? Just kill him, just annihilate him. Right? That's the first option. But he decided not to do that. Instead, he started talking to the bear. Can you talk to bear? Can you talk to bear? Yes, you can. Yeah. Yes, you can talk to trees, right? If you ever decide to do that, you ever decide to talk to a tree, just wait and listen. You'll get an answer. You will, I promise you. You'll get an answer, right? So then Charles Fisher talked to the bear, and the bear had, he's got good reason. He's got good reasons. And so part of the, you see what we witnessed here, this is a visible sign of a promise. Your word is demonstrated here. And in this story then, the same thing happens in the development of a protocol where bear says, I'm telling you why I need the salmon. And then he had to demonstrate why he needed the salmon. So he took the Nuu-Chal-Nuth fisher, long journey into his community, and he met with his Hutwith. And then the Nuu-Chal-Nuth fisher sat with the Hutwith and developed a protocol to share the salmon, Huh? And so the promise was bear would no longer wreck the trap, right? And he could have a share of the salmon. And the important point in the story is that the salmon was juxtaposed, held in common between the Nuu-Chal-Nuth and the bear. So I had a couple of researchers doing research in Atleo River, part of my territory. And they met a bear and they chased it away. And I said, no, don't do that. Right? Don't. The bear lives there. That's his home. You're the intruders, right? You researchers. Said, next time you see the bear, you tell him Umeek sent you, right? This is Umeek's territory, right? You were there by permission, right? So they met the bear again and they talked to the bear. These two researchers, white ladies, right? And you know the bear listened. Huh? And how do you know the bear's listening? Just like a human, he goes. Yeah. We have a word that was recorded in Mozinho, Spanish explorer journal, logbook, who had come up the West Coast and had gone to Friendly Cove. And Chief McQuina, who was a chief at that time there, and Mozinho, the Spanish explorer, learned the language. And in the language, he asked McQuina, what is your name for God, right? And McQuina said, Kwa'ut. And my grandmother had taught me that name when I was little. And when I went to university, I picked up this book, and there's this word in the book that I had learned as a small child, Kwa'ut. Now that word, Kwa'ut, means owner of that which is. Owner of that which is. And if we take it literally, then I am owned. I have been created. I am owned. So in my language is a relationship, because ownership is a relationship. Right? If I am owned, I'm related. Right? And so relationships to our people then becomes primary. It's like the main. It's like you cut that. You're no more when you cut that line. Huh? So Kwa'ut's then owner of that which is, owner of existence, owner of the oceans, the trees, the air. And so what is owned then, we're in relationship with. So we talk to the water. There was a person that was doing research on water in New Zealand recently, a friend of mine. And none of the local people there would talk to her about water. And so finally one of the people said, look, you're doing research on water. Why don't you go to the water and ask the water? Talk to the water. So she went to the water, and lo and behold, she got some answers. That's hard to believe. You have to do it yourself before you start believing. She put her hand into the water, and 2 ducks came, and in a flowing river, somehow the ducks are able to be stationary in flowing water. Stationary, and they both faced her. And that was definitely a miraculous sign. She knew. So she started talking to the ducks. And she said, look, I have to go upriver. Can you go and warn the people upriver? Because I'm going to meet some people up there that I'm coming. And lo and behold, the ducks started going upriver. All you Khoas, you know what I'm saying is true. I don't have to say it's true. It's a recent experience, right? And so many other occurrences like that continue to take place, not only with our people, but with those who begin to become aware and become, so many things possible that were not thought to be possible. Now, sometimes it is taken to mean, when we speak of the strengths of Aboriginal indigenous ways, that it is a demeaning of Western ways. And sometimes that is taken to be the context of this kind of discussion. But you may find it difficult to believe that the traditional peoples, that ancient peoples were not like that. They were not critical analytical in the sense of critical analysis, as is taught in universities. Critical analysis is extremely powerful, gives us everything that a modern society in advanced technology gives. That comes from critical analysis. And there's a danger to that process, which can be very destructive. Right? So we need blankets. let's introduce academic blankets, to deal with the dangers of that academic process. Because our universities, you understand that all of our universities began as theological seminaries. They were spiritual seminaries to begin with. And somehow they're wandering off in other directions. But we are friends. We are the friends. And the friendship is demonstrated by this ceremony today. The school district, the professional people who have been educated, are welcome in the circle. And so, as happened between the bear and the Nuu-Chal fisher, you see, you, Mamathni, can be the bear, and we'll be the Nuu-Chal fishers. Okay, we can flip it around too. Chu, like go up at least. Chamahtaitus, Hwa Aklitu, Hichwa, Achku, Hwa Apekin, Hichwa, Chamahtaitus, Optik, Nandanexa, Sasawa, Optioke, Chamahtai. The speaking from the ancient world, right? The connection with the ancestors that was addressed earlier today, right? It's where the teachings came from. They were the brave ones. They were the strong ones. Not all of them. Not all of them. There never were all of them like that. But there were enough to make a family safe. There were enough to make a community safe. And not always. Like nations, they rose and fell. It's hard work to be a good family, to be a good community. And when the dogs start acting up, things are starting to go wrong because the dogs reflect the behavior of their masters. They do. And you can see that wherever you go. True, una, it is that long, my talk.
Well, it's going to be hard to follow that up, eh? With the series that comes. Thank you, Uncle, for reminding us about the knowledge that's been here forever, about the importance of those relationships, the importance of go the right way. And sometimes the distractions come, but you got to remind yourself about those teachings of go the right way. There's all sorts of stories that you shared in here too, and teachings that are embedded in them. Our connection with that spiritual realm across the water, or however the society wants to look at it, the importance of keeping the community safe and protocol too, of all of the ancestors that you mentioned in this book too, that taught you those protocols as you grew up. When I read them, it further ingrained in me the importance of those stories as ways of embedding the truth. And you mentioned those stories as hypotheses tested and are true because still here. Right? Those communities are still here. The language, as you've shown, still here. The people that you've shown still here. So, Haichka again for sharing some of those things. Tsawalk, a Nuu-Chal-Nuth Worldview. You can get those from UBC Press and on the website. So I'm going to turn it over to close with our brother if he has any comments. Yeah. Huh? Oh. Yeah. You're the timekeeper, Steph. So yeah.
Umeek, we have a couple questions from our relatives tuning in from around the world. One of the questions asked is, can you speak to the importance and value of restoring traditional place names?
Yes, traditional place names were indicative of the importance of script that we learn in the school system is parallel to the importance of place names, in that the greatest books from which we learn in universities are parallel to the teaching that one gets when you go into the forest, when you travel the waterways, and when you look in the sky at night. And so place names like Chitapi is the name of a mountain where we're from. And Chitapi comes from the word che, meaning to cut. And Chitapi is something that's suspended. It's a cutting suspension of a mountain into the southeast winds that can be very destructive. So the mountain then is a protective mountain in the same way that blankets are protective mountains. And cutting is part of the necessity of our reality, to cut. So a place name then is like that, in a similar way that when you achieve a name based on who you are. And so a place name is what a place is representative of. And so it's not a random designation, it has meaning. So it's very significant to know where you are. So to know where you are, you must know two basic things: who you are and then where you are. Huh? So.
Thank you. That was asked by Terry Doward that asked that question. So thank you.
That's a former student of mine, yeah.
Wonderful. And I'm going to just pass it back to the floor. Were there any questions from our audience?
Gary Kessler, Gigame, Umeek. My question, well, thank you, first of all, thank you for your presentation and your teachings to us. My question to you that I often think of, and I think is an amazing opportunity to ask you from someone such as yourself as a scholar and a hereditary chief, and you've gone through the residential school system yourself. My question is, and I often think of this because of our children here, my own children, what do you think the world would look like today, if we all had equal opportunity with our indigenous knowledge and philosophy to be able to add to all of the faculties that are within the world and the way it operates today? Yes.
Well, to answer a question like that, there are different, if you look through the lens of the academy, you can come up with many answers to that kind of question. But if we look through an indigenous lens to a question like that, then the indigenous lens would say that all that has happened today was meant to happen in the way that it happened. It's the way that it happened. And the way that it happened has to do with what both the happener and the happenee decided in their own journeys through life. Right? And so we are here today and done the work today that has been done today, right, based on all of the things that were decided in the past, right? And we have come to this point. And so the important thing then about always for our people, our ancient people, was not so much back there, but now. And if you look at the language in our stories, the language and stories were now. They were now, because life is now. Life is now. And so there was anthropologists who studied our stories. And one who had written stories down, and 30 years later came back and told the people, look, your stories aren't true. because they've changed over time. And they could have killed him for that, because he didn't understand that the stories are now. Of course, they're different now. Huh? And tomorrow it's going to be different again. Huh? But it's always now. Always now. Huh? Son of Raven. Every time we told a story of Nuu-Chal-Nuth, and even before you started talking the story, smiles. People knew the story. They were anticipating. They wanted to hear. My mother said to me when she was a little girl, she would hug the ankles of her grandmother. Please, tell me the story again. They couldn't get enough of those now stories, stories of now. Right? True.
Strykunas Tsawalk Syeyutsus Tlaatlakat and Squalwan Tanaquel Ní Quamcumstuch to Squalwan Alla Tanaquel to Maxquel Strykunas Tsi at the Vancouver Island Regional Libraries, UBC Press, Syeyutsus School District 68, Umeek Stem Huainamet Tanaquel Haitapk. Just thanking my dear friends and relatives for joining us here today. UBC Press, Vancouver Island Regional Libraries, our most respected relative here for laying down his most honorable self through his teachings and his stories. May it resonate throughout the rest of time and help carry us to a better place. We're really grateful to be here today, and we acknowledge each and every one of you for coming forward and joining us. I'm going to finish off by sharing another song. See and see. Oh, 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 oh,
questions? Yeah.